Welcome to RICO 12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RICO 12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented many fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. Today's speaker is Buddy C, and his topic will be Powerless, but not Hopeless. We will get to his talk in the Q&A afterwards in just a minute, but first for a little bit of business here. Just 2 days ago, on March 1st, RICO 12 Shares went live on all podcast platforms. RICO 12 Shares is an open to anyone, anytime, shares only, unaffiliated 12-step meeting. All are welcome to record a solution-based share that is uploaded to be part of a short 20-minute recorded recovery meeting available in podcast format anytime, anywhere. To listen to the first 2 episodes that have been posted, or to learn more and to record a share of your own, please visit www.rico12.com/shares, or click on the links in the show notes of or chat of the live meeting that'll be in here to access that. There are also a couple of other RICO 12 family of recovery resources on the horizon, and I'm super excited about these adventures and projects that I believe my higher power is directing RICO 12 into. RICO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. We gratefully accept one-time contributions through PayPal and Venmo. Through the links in the chat and show notes, we also have started a new monthly subscription program called RICO 12 Spearheads. To join in and help support all of these cool projects, please consider donating at rico12.com/support, or click on the links in the chat of the live meeting or in the show notes of the podcast that will be there. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now, let's introduce our guest speaker for today, another RICO 12 first-time speaker, Buddy C. Now, here's a little bit about him. Buddy C is an author, businessman, father, podcaster, and a spiritual seeker since his early teens. Buddy made remarkable spiritual progress when he started questioning his belief systems when they did not help with his alcohol addiction. Through 12-step recovery and open-mindedness to spiritual ideas outside of his comfort zone, Buddy has been sober for over 12 years as of when this was written, and Buddy recently wrote the award-winning book, Powerless but Not Helpless, a recovery interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, a book that helps bridge the gap between a power greater than ourselves and the doorknob. Take it away, Buddy. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. Buddy alcoholic, sobriety date 11/10/08. I'm grateful for being here today, Justin. Thank you for the opportunity just to share some experience, strength, and hope. You know, as long as I stay in my experience, strength, and hope, I have a good day. When I get into the like we talked about earlier, the manipulation and the control and all those things, it goes when it goes toward Buddy, it's a bad day. So thank you so much. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. No doubt, no hint from the accent. I tell people I'm from South Boston. They say, "What?" No, it doesn't work. I tried to get rid of this accent too. I've been a businessman for years, and I had to redo my voicemail in my office. This was years ago, and it's the first time I'd heard my voice. And I said, "Press 0 for the operator." And I said, "Is that me? I sound like a freaking hick. What is that?" And so I re-recorded it at least 10 times. And every time I'd try to say 0 different, and I couldn't do it. And I just said, screw it. And I just left it the way it was. It is what it is. I've been a spiritual seeker, I think, all my life. I had a real experience with God in my early teens that carried me actually through into my 20s. I did not really start drinking alcoholically till my late 20s, early 30s. And it was as a response to business stress. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I had stress that I could not I could not get relief from. So I tried alcohol, and alcohol worked. And it was not long before I was a daily drinker. Did not take long at all. Only a couple of years is all it took. This time I was drinking daily. I'm not going to go into a huge drunkalog. I'd rather spend my time on the good stuff. So, but I will say enough to qualify at least. So I was drinking heavily, and I'd put on a good bit of weight, 30 pounds or so, drinking. And I'm not a big guy, so it was a lot. So I said, I'm going to go on a diet to lose weight. So what diet can I do and still drink my 90 proof Smirnoff? What diet would that be? So I found the Atkins diet. So I went on the Atkins diet, and over 9 months, I think I lost 10 pounds or so. I did have to go to a different mixer, though. I couldn't use my orange juice anymore. I had to go to Crystal Light lemonade and 90 proof Smirnoff. What a combination. And one day I woke up and I had a severe pain in my stomach. And I went to the hospital, and I had pancreatitis. Lost 90% of my pancreas. Was on a ventilator. They told my wife to pick out my pallbearers. I had a 50-50 chance of living. I was in my mid-30s at this time. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, 2 surgeries over the course of a few months. The last time I was in the hospital, when I came out, I weighed 133 pounds. So it had really ravaged me, and I was a diabetic because of my pancreatitis at that time. But within a couple of months, I was drinking again. I could not find really, I asked God to help me with this, and I had as good a good relationship with the God of my understanding at the time. And I always thought that God helped me with things. I don't know if I was taught that, or if that's just what I gathered from the things I learned, that I did my best and then God would do the rest, kind of thing. Was what my part was always doing all I could do. And it was always me and God. I wasn't concerned about others unless there's something I could, unless I was in good shape and everything was good, then I should have concern for someone else. But it was me and God. I had to figure this thing out. That did not work for my alcoholism. Did not work at all. So I struggled and continued to drink. Ended up getting a DUI. Fortunately, and this is just God doing for me. I don't know if it's providence, where everything is preordained, or if I'm beginning to think it's more like Romans 8 that talks about every detail of our lives of love working to something good. I think it's maybe more of that. I don't know. It really doesn't matter. I got the DUI in a neighboring county. I have a lake house. I had a lake house then, and I was coming back from the lake house and woke up in jail. So my business, the county my business was in, which dealt with the public a lot, no one knew. So it was helpful to me, and I believe that I was provided for the entire time. I was never out of the center of that hand of love. Never, ever, ever. That I believe I might have thought I was lost, but I was just not aware. So as an answer to the DUI, I started going to meetings. I knew I had to do something. So I came to meetings and I read the steps. And I said, I can't control my alcohol, and my drinking is unmanageable. That's how I read the first step, Never saw the we. Didn't realize till years later that almost all the steps are plural, and they're plural for a reason. I can't get sober without you. I would like to be able to. I would like to be able to be just me, but it doesn't work that way. It never works that way. So I started struggling. I was a guy that would come to meetings drunk, would get a week, a month. I think one time I got 9 months. One time I had an anniversary date on a leap year, I remember. I said, I won't ruin that one. I'll keep that one. No, I didn't keep it. It finally drove me to a point of suicide. I finally got to the point, and this was the thing, when I came into AA, I saw other people getting sober that didn't qualify for God to do something for them. Because the way I was taught in my basic Christian belief, I was a member of a you would call a charismatic or spirit-filled church, that type of background. If they weren't able to check off the boxes, God wasn't going to do anything for them. Why is it working for them and not working for me? So all of that, and I finally just got to the point where I said, I can't keep doing this. Had a couple of lame suicide attempts. I was too chicken to go through with it. But I vowed, I said, either you help me with this or I'm out of here. I will figure out a way to do it. I am done. And all of a sudden it just lifted. I was like, crap, what's different? I was like, is this all I had to do? Give up? Was that it? This whole time that I've struggled? So it took me 6 years to get my first year. So I know what it is to fight, because I was never taught to surrender. I was taught to double down, work harder and do better. And if that doesn't work twice as hard. And I've got a friend that says I wore my do better out. And I said, yeah, I know that one. I did. I wore mine out too. But when I finally said enough's enough, I surrender. I give up. My solutions are not working. And the funny thing is, the first meeting I went to, I got hope that it could work for me. And the guy that was chairing the meeting, it was in Rome, Georgia. The guy that was chairing the meeting, I thought, I said, I'm a lot smarter than this guy is. If he could get it, I know I can. And that was my problem. So I thought I had to figure it all out. I was a guy that, when I was a kid and you had your pinball machines you played, when I had a new pinball machine I found, you don't play, you read the instructions first so that you can get the most points and win. That's the point of the whole thing, isn't it? To win. So that's the way I approached everything. That did not work for sobriety, did not work at all. So I started going to meetings, went through, got my first year after 6. I had a sponsor from the beginning. Interesting enough, I was presented with the sponsor I needed at the time. I'm always presented with what I need at the time. Always. I've had 3 sponsors and everyone was the right one for me at that time. My first one did exactly the same thing I did. He was in and out, and so he understood. That's the great thing that I found in recovery. We meet people who have been where we are. Everyone's been at 5 days, 1 day. If they've got more time, they've been where you are. So I continued in recovery, and I was serious about my recovery. But I was still lacking something. I knew my spiritual, I didn't throw out my Christianity. And I saw the principles of AA work. They were transparent principles that worked, with any belief system that I've had. I said, let me start looking at some other belief systems and see what works for me. If there's anything I just knew I was lacking something spiritually. I wanted to continue to grow. And I read the New Testament through every year for a number of years using the YouVersion app. And I just read through every year. except Revelations. When I got there, I skipped on over to Matthew to start again. But as I continued, I started looking at Buddhism, and I read the Nag Hammadi and all the Gnostic writings. If you've never read the Book of Thomas, I would suggest it. Lots of good things in the Book of Thomas. I read the entire Nag Hammadi, which is a huge book. Looking at all these are all the lost non-canonical books that were written, or a lot of them that were written about Jesus Christ and all of his teachings. So I went through all those things, and I stumbled on a painting called The Vinegar Tasters. And the Vinegar Tasters was a metaphorical meeting, and there's a story that goes along with it. It's told different ways, but this is the way I heard it. It was a metaphorical meeting between Confucius, the Buddha, and Lao Tzu. And Lao Tzu is contributed with writing the Tao Te Ching. Now, I did not have a clue what the Tao Te Ching was. If we lived in China, we would have a Tao Te Ching in the house, just like most families, at least in the South and a lot of the U.S., have a Bible in the house, or at least know what the Bible is, may be able to recognize some verses from the Bible, that kind of a thing. Even people that have never been in church know what the Bible is. Well, it's the same way with the Tao Te Ching. That's spelled Taoteching. It's the second most published book in the world behind the Bible. So that kind of gives you an idea. So it was Lao Tzu, Buddha, and Confucius was the third. And they used to have vinegar tastings where they would taste vinegar. They used vinegar for a lot of medicinal purposes back at that time, and they would flavor it different ways. So Confucius tasted the vinegar and he spit it out, and he was, his comments were, why would anyone taste such a thing? Confucius' teachings are a lot like the book of Proverbs. You do the right things and the right things will happen, that kind of teaching. Honor your parents, blah, 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 all those things. Buddha tasted the vinegar, and he said that we suffer because we prefer the taste to be different than it is. So we suffer. Lao Tzu tasted the vinegar, and he smiled. He said, it's vinegar. It's how it's supposed to taste. Acceptance. I was like, okay. I'm going there. So let me start looking at Lao Tzu's teachings and the Tao Te Ching. So I started reading the Tao Te Ching. There's lots of translations. You can just Google Tao Te. Stephen Mitchell has one of my favorites. I quote his a good bit. I started studying the Tao Te Ching. I was involved in an online recovery community. Started hosting a meeting where there's 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching. So we would go through a verse, a meeting, and talk about how it related to recovery. And the Tao Te Ching either resonates with you or it doesn't. There's no in between that I have found. So we started a meeting, and we started eventually that led to a podcast. It's called the Tao of Our Understanding, Alcohol Recovery Podcast. And we've got over 200 episodes that are at any of your podcast aggregators. You should be able to find it. But we went through the Tao Te Ching. We went through some other books that were related. And when the pandemic started, during the pandemic, I thought, I wonder if I could go through the Tao Te Ching and write not a translation, but an interpretation of each of these verses as to what they mean to me personally. I said, that is a shitload of verses. I don't know. I'm sorry. Is cursing okay? I've been trying to hold my tongue.
If it comes out, it comes out. We do try and keep it clean.
I'll keep it very civil.
Thank you.
So, and I wrote the first few, and I was like, this is pretty good. So over 11 days, I wrote all 81. And I read them now, and I just sometimes still I just tear up because they're such a gift to me. And I took a book. You can even see a number of the verses if you go to buddyc.org. There are a number of verses there that you can look at and get more information. And I will also send Justin. I'll send a PDF of the book to anyone who wants one. If they'll go to the website and email me from the website, I will send them a current PDF. I don't mind at all. I mean, this was a gift to me. I've got it. I have to give it away. You know, I don't have a choice in the matter. So that's a couple of things that's very interesting. I have learned. I'll take another minute, tell you a couple of other little stories in my story. Years ago, I know you guys that go to face-to-face meetings, y'all are probably not like me, but in my meetings, there's usually that one old rough guy that is just hard to get along with, that not many people like, that kind of a thing. That happens quite often. And we had one of those in our group. His name was Clint. He's passed now. He got sick and was in the hospital. And I just felt impressed. I needed to go visit him. It was 30 minutes away. I ride a motorcycle a lot, or did then. It wasn't even a pretty day to ride. It was in the 40s and overcast. But I went and visited him because I felt like I needed to, for no other reason. Come to find out, he was doing a service called Transitions Daily. And it's all of the daily readers that go out in one email, you know, as Bill sees it, 24 hours, daily reflections, all those, with some acronyms and other things. As time went on, I started helping him with daily reflections. He had 8,000 people at that time that got it. We ended up getting the online group confirmed with AA as an online meeting with a service number. I called AA about it, actually. I called a guy in the online committee. I asked him, Clint was afraid it was going to get shut down because in AA you're not supposed to do devotionals. They don't approve daily devotionals for you to do compiling like that. So I called this guy and was talking with him about it. I was just asking him, I said, we have a daily email that we send out, and we want to know if there's any way we can get approved. We don't want to have this shut down. And he said, are you talking about Transitions Daily? I said, yes, I am. So we worked out how to make it work within AA. So we made it work and changed some things so that it would be acceptable. As time went on, he had 8,000 on now. We just passed 19,000 daily subscribers. If that's something you're interested in, dailyaaemails.com will take you there. And from that, Justin, I started listening to podcasts years later. So I started talking with podcasters and asked them if I could put their podcast on the resources list for Transitions Daily, and if they thought that Transitions Daily would be a good service for their people, they're welcome to announce it. If not, it's no big deal. I'm not, it's not quid pro quo. So it's, we want to put you on our list regardless. So I started getting to know some podcasters. That led to me being in the online group where I started the Tao Te Ching meeting. And that led to when the pandemic started, the guy that ran the group, I said, I want to do an online meeting. I think we're going to need it for a couple of months while this pandemic we get through this. So I started a meeting March 15th when the pandemic was starting. And it's actually taken on a life of itself and has its own group conscience now. It's the Fourth Dimensioners. You can get there at zoomaameetings.com is the actual Zoom link. Will take you straight to the meeting and it's 9 p.m. Eastern every night. We have a speaker meeting on Saturday night. And they totally run themselves. I had to stop going to the group conferences because I wanted to control it too much. So I had to stop. I saw my limitations. But there's things like that none of those things would have happened if I wouldn't have gone and visited a guy in the hospital I didn't even like. We just never know where these small services that we do, where they're going to lead us. We just never know. I think I'll stop my share there, Justin. What do you have for me, sir? Is that good?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, buddy. I really appreciate your shares. So all of these resources that you've listed, I've taken note of them. I'll put them in the show notes of the podcast so that anybody who goes to the podcast and goes to the show notes can find them. Link to all of these things. We'll make sure they're in there. And a little bit of I would love for Rico 12 to be added to that list of podcast resources on that email.
I would be happy to.
If you would, yeah. So we'll make that happen. But I wrote down several things that just when you said them, I went, oh, that is something that I need today. Before we get to that, a reminder to our live audience for any questions you may have for Buddy, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will get to those as they come in. But I loved the statement you said that somebody told you once. I just wore my do better out. Man, that just speaks so loudly to me that, I grew up in a very similar type situation, faith type situation where, hey, God helps me when I do this, when I check off these boxes. And what a freedom it has become to recognize for myself that there are others who don't check those boxes and yet God helps them. And so why not me? Exactly. And now all of a sudden I can accept it rather than say, oh, well, I guess I didn't get that because I didn't check that box. No, it has nothing to do with that. What a beautiful thing. Can you expound on that just a little bit for us? I would be happy to. Sometimes, since I've written this book, people think I've become a Taoist. I have not become a Taoist. That's a whole different thing. That's the difference between if you read the teachings of Jesus and became a Catholic or Presbyterian or some other form of religion. The great thing about the Tao Te Ching was that it spoke to that do better issue. Things like, can you allow the mud to settle, the turbid water to settle, so the right answer appears by itself? I mean, that was exactly what I needed to do. Or one of my other favorites, stop thinking and end your problems. And it all just spoke. It's like the principles of AA that apply to our religious beliefs. These principles I found in the Tao Te Ching applied to what I already believed. I didn't have to change what I believed, and they spoke so much to surrender and letting go, which I need so much. Letting go is so difficult for me. And I liked what a lady in one of our meetings used to say. Everybody has a nickname because you don't have last name. She was Butterfly Pound because she put butterflies on everything. She said, rather than let go and let God, it is let go or get dragged. And I love that because that makes perfect sense. It's in the letting go. It's not in what I believe. It's in the letting go. I love that. And I want to dig there, I guess, for a minute on that concept of surrender, of letting go. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the word surrender doesn't exist. It's not found in there. The word is abandon self, abandon myself utterly, those types of phrases. But there's something to this surrender. Is there a difference in your mind between abandoning, surrendering, letting go, or is it all the same thing? Tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on that. Letting go absolutely would be the same thing to me as surrender. And I think that's a quote from, is that from How It Works? Or, the results were nil until we let go absolutely? Or is that the promise? Wherever that is.
Yeah,
I don't know where that is, but yeah, that's good.
it's really the idea that when I surrender, let's say you're in the military and you're in an army and you're defeated and you surrender. What do? You lay down all your weapons and you stop fighting. You stop fighting. And that's what the steps do for me. I kept fighting because I was full of fear. And the steps helped me to identify my fear and turn my will and the cares of my life. Let all those things go. And my understanding of that now is let those things go to love, really. It's love that changes me. And the other thing, Justin, with the belief systems changing, the biggest thing, I thought I believed, and then I changed, and then I would be able to love people. But it's the flip of that is what I have found. I act my way. We've heard that forever. Act our way into right thinking rather than think our way into right acting. I don't have to believe anything. If I go and love someone and help someone, I see my life change. I see my life change. And that's always worked for me every time. And all I have to do is be open and available. So that's flipped on its head. It really has for me. Does that make sense? Is there anything more with that you would like to?
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it totally makes sense. In my own experiences, like you said, I thought I believed, and then everything flipped on its head. And I think for me, I thought I believed, everything flipped on its head, and it all of a sudden made me a better believer than what I was before when everything flipped on its head. And what a cool experience that was. We've got a question from our live audience here. Ryan says this: thank you for sharing that initial surrender moment. Sometimes I have a hard time hearing those experiences and thinking, and that was it? Everything's better forever? And then he says, I've come to understand that it's often not so smooth, at least for him. Can you talk a little bit more about your learning to surrender process after that initial surrender?
Thank you, Ryan. That's an excellent question. I believe the entire program is there to teach me, to show me how to surrender in more moments of the day. That's the entire program for me. The program gets those things out of the way that cause me to hold on and to think I needed to control to make something happen. My fear of failure, my fear of financial insecurity, my fear of not pleasing people, all those fears. When I started surrendering those fears, I remember my son, he was star student and didn't go to college because he wanted to drink and drug. And it just upset me that he wouldn't go because he could have went to school anywhere he wanted to go, be anything he wanted to be. But he chose not to. And I was very upset about it. And I couldn't get over the anger because I thought he was wasting his opportunity. But I stayed angry. So I went to my sponsor, did what I was supposed to. I said, I do not know why I can't get over this anger. So we started talking about it and digging down into it. It wasn't about him at all. It was about him embarrassing me. That's what I was really upset about. And that's the kind of gifts the program. So what did I do? I surrendered it. I use page 84 a lot, which is the 10th step that we look for on dishonesty, resentment, and selfishness. And fear. And when we see these things, we ask God to remove them at once. We make an amend quickly if we need to. We tell someone about it, and we turn our thoughts to someone we can help. And if you look just after that, it says love and tolerance is our code, and we've stopped fighting anything and anyone, even alcohol. So the love and tolerance is about stopping the fight. And that can only happen if I'm going through this process and working this in the rest of my life. So the surrender is the same. I've got a really good non-AA book that I love on surrender. It's David Hawkins, Letting Go, the Pathway to Surrender. If you go to buddyc.org and click on the resources link, number one, there's a resources link there that has all different kinds of resources, including podcasts and all those things. And that's another place I'll get you listed, Justin. But it also has, it has another thing I'll tell you about too. It has that, and it has a bookstore with links for all those books, all the books that we've used, including this book. But it is an incredible how-to on how to surrender. It's very, very good. And I also have a daily Tao email that I started writing. And there's a sign-up link there at buddyc.org. I've taken all these thoughts and put them into a quote, a thought, and affirmation. So if that speaks to you, sign up. I'm going to publish that as like a daily reflections type book, maybe later this year or next year. But I'm going to keep having the emails for free. The surrender is the challenge, Ryan. It's always surrender, always, always, always. I never graduate from this program. I mean, it's never going to be, okay, God, you showed me twice, I'll take it from there, no problem. It's never that at all. I like that phrase, the weaker I get, the stronger I become. And that never changes. All I can get is weaker. That's it.
Love it. Love it. Good stuff. And once again, all of these resources that he's putting out there will be in the show notes of the podcast so that it's easily accessed at a later time. Awesome. Got a couple more questions and comments that have come in from the live audience. This is from Matt. Matt says, I remember very precisely the moment I realized God had restored my sanity. If you had a similar experience, can you speak to how you felt at that moment when you realized God had restored your sanity?
I'm not sure I'm restored to sanity yet, Matt. How I look at that is the insaneness for me was my thinking that this was an intellectual issue. That was the insaneness for me, that I could figure this out. And that's the insane thinking. And I think what we're restored to is that childlike dependence that we all had. I didn't come home from school in the third grade and knock on the door and ask if I could come in and could I have dinner tonight and could I sleep here? Of course I didn't. I just knew it would be given to me. That wasn't my job at that age. And it's not my job now. I have to be, I'm returning to that dependency. So my insane thinking is the thinking that it's all, for me, the thinking that it's dependent upon me to do. And it's not. But now I do have a job, though. This is not that I do nothing. And for me, this is more difficult than trying to do it myself. And that is letting that go. And instead of focusing on me, ask the higher power who I can help. And be still until I see who is placed in my path to help, who to pray. If I have an issue going on, I have someone to pray for about that. And someone's placed in my path. And I do that page 84 all of the time. I have affirmations associated with page 84. I have people with any issue I've ever had. I ask, who can I pray for? Who can I help? And sometimes it's just someone to pray for. Had a sponsee that was getting divorced. I said, I want you to pray for, do you know any, he was a marriage counselor and he was getting a divorce. And he was so embarrassed. And I said, do you know any other marriage counselors? I said, who are you praying for? And I'd have sponsees, if they were doing page 84, they would text me as the person to tell, let's say, my marriage. and I wouldn't have to call them, but if they were just doing that. And I asked him, I said, who are you praying for? He said, all the men that are getting divorced. I said, no, 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 no. What one man are you praying for in the very same way you would pray for yourself? Who are you praying for? And he said, oh, okay. So he sent me back a verse, and I said, okay, good. Pray for him every time this bothers you and see what happens. And he started changing, and he got through it.
Yeah, that's specific. Getting specific like that is very helpful for me also. Thank you for sharing that. Next question from our live audience. This is from Ella, and I'll read through this and get to the question here at the end. Ella says, it's a fact that language evolves with time. I believe, therefore, we must adapt the message to the newcomer's language and how they understand it. I love that you mentioned the Tao either resonates or doesn't. I find that God consciousness or love consciousness is in essence unnameable, and that is universal throughout religions, spiritual practices. What are your thoughts on that? And would you say that words matter only when spirit is aligned with higher power?
I think I used to have a real problem when I'd go in a meeting and people would talk about God different than what I thought God was. I wouldn't say anything, but it would bother me a little bit. I even got to the point that I couldn't say the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting, not because I didn't believe in God, but I no longer believed God was out there. I believe God was here, and that we're all part of the consciousness of God. We're all a drop out of the ocean of love, in other words, if you want to take the bhakti approach to that. So I couldn't say that prayer anymore. So I wouldn't fuss about it. I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't try to change it. I just wouldn't say anything. And one day I was in a meeting, and I realized, and this is how I think knowledge comes to us, real knowledge. I realized that everyone has their own God language. No different than if we spoke different physical languages. If you spoke German, I don't like the way German sounds, but you're not wrong for speaking German if that's, your language. I mean, and taking that same approach to spirituality, that everybody has their God language, and it's all a little different. So from that point on, I could go to a meeting, I could say the Lord's Prayer after the meeting, because we could share a common language then, even though it was not my language. And yes, I see love as being God, or how we think of, and actually really even more than that, what love does. Love drives us to the current moment. We can't love anyone unless we're here right where our feet are. We can't do that at another time. Fear takes us out of the moment every time. Fear takes me to yesterday, with regret or guilt, or tomorrow about worry. So another way to look at God is now. That's another 3-letter word for God. And that's what love does, is it brings us to the moment. And love's what changes me every time. It's not me praying and ask to be changed. It's when I choose to love instead of act out on my fear. That's what smooths me out. So yes, I'm right there with you. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. And the next question here, I think you addressed just now, but I want to read it because it's really powerful. And I think, and if you have anything else to add to it, please do so. And I think that somebody could say this coming from any faith tradition where they are, pretty devout followers of that faith tradition. Abby says, "Hi there. Thank you so much for your share. I found it both comforting and challenging. I'm a non-denominational Christian. I love Jesus, and my faith is really important to me. I think it's really good that the 12-step programs are inclusive of other faith backgrounds, and I want to love and hold space for everyone regardless what they believe. But I'll be honest, it's really hard to see other people of different spiritualities thriving in program while I'm struggling to maintain my own sobriety. I don't believe it invalidates my faith, but it does make me feel really insecure. I'm not sure how to handle it. Any advice would be welcome." Any additional thoughts on that, buddy?
Yes, I have some experience with that, Abby. I felt the same way. I realized God was much bigger than what I thought God was. I had God in this little box, and I had answers for every question you could ask. I had the answer. And I've thrown all of that out. And I've said, I'm going to stay with what works for me. And that is staying in this moment and asking who I can help, and just stay there and ride the moment. Just keep riding that wave and not even consider, well, are they right? They're all going to hell, or they're whatever it is. I stopped trying to figure all of that out, because I figure if I'm walking in love to the best of my ability, whatever happens, I'm going to be a part of. So I'm not really that concerned with it. And the concern's getting less and less. Um, you know, even the Bible says that, First John, that God is love. For me, that means love is an action. That God is an action, because love's a verb. Love is an action. Uh, and if I work the program the way that I'm taught, and I look for a way to be helpful, and I'm just open-minded, that's really all. You can try this. This is what I do before a meeting. And during a meeting, if I'm having an issue, I open my heart. I may go around the room and do this to each individual person. I open my heart to the person. I send them love, and I ask, how can I be of service to them today? I do those three things every time, that, especially if I'm a little anxious or there's some disturbance there. I open my heart, I send them love, and how can I be of service to you? And I just go around and do that. And man, it makes my meetings better, makes my day better. Just looking for a way to be helpful. I started when I went to the grocery store, parking in the second or third best parking spot instead of the first one that God blessed me with, right? God bless me with his parking. Yeah, right. So, that kind of a thing. It started changing me. I quit being so aggressive driving as I used to be. I would get in the car with my wife, and instead of waiting till she made me change the radio station to what she liked, I would change the station when we got in the car. Those little things that we can do of loving kindness, and really just walking it's a compassionate lifestyle. Really, I believe in a non-judgmental. Course in Miracles really helped me a lot with that too. If we, when we defend, we're inviting attack. There's a lot of things like that come from Course in Miracles. I had to get over the verbiage they use because I didn't like it, but that's another one of those things where everyone has their own God language. So, yeah, that's great. Thank you. I hope that was helpful.
Oh man, and that stabbed me to the heart, that not taking the best parking spot because God gave it to me. Man, that just stabbed me to the heart. Now I'm going to have to rethink that and go for the second or third best so that somebody else can have that best one. That hurts my selfish heart. But thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate that, buddy. All right. Have another question. We may have time for one more after this. We'll see. But this is from an anonymous attendee. Anonymous attendee says, I understand that love and acceptance is our code. I am separating from a controlling person and still living together. The energy is toxic and I'm trying to be of service in the house, but it's making me ill. Do you have any suggestions that I could implement? My recovery is slipping.
I was in a relationship that was difficult, and I eventually left the relationship because I just couldn't. I wasn't spiritually mature enough to be in that relationship and maintain my sobriety. I just couldn't do it. I learned a lot of things. She liked to fight, and she would fight and get fiery. And I realized that I didn't have to respond, and the fight would end. She wouldn't like it because she wanted to fight. But I just stopped responding. No matter what she said, didn't matter. I don't need to defend. Every time, like I said a while ago, when I defend, I'm inviting attack again. And that stopped the fight. And the relationship, learning to practice those things. Now, just because you're practicing love doesn't mean that you're a pushover either. Doesn't mean that. Practicing love is really part of seeing those things I can change and those things I can't. And then taking action with the things I can change. But it doesn't mean that you're a pushover. Now, maybe the service you need to be doing is toward someone out. If this was a sponsee of mine, I would say that the loving action should be towards someone else who is in a relationship or in need, because you're benefiting from those actions. And that's not really service if you're benefiting from the action. That's just me. That's just me. That doesn't mean you don't need to love them and be tolerant. I'm not saying that. But if you're looking at it as working page 84, for example, I always use someone totally unrelated that I am not benefiting in any way if I'm working that. And I'll stay close to my sponsor. Do you have a sponsor? What is your sponsor suggesting that you do? And lots of meetings while you work this out. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah, thank you so much, buddy. All right. I'm tempted here to read what my favorite verse that I read through in this and have you comment on it. You'd like me to do that? Okay, perfect.
Sure. So being we haven't read a verse out of the book at all, so yeah, that'd be great.
So verse number 36, and it reads, "The mystery of surrender. I must stop resisting my addiction for recovery to work. To weaken something, I must first stop resisting its strength. To reject something, I must first accept it. To possess something, I must first give it away. This is called the mystery of surrender. The submissive and flexible overcome the resistant and unyielding. Unless I learn to give when I am in need, the application of this truth remains hidden in deep waters." That just hit me really hard when I initially read it. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts around that and how that works in your life.
Basically, what we've been talking about this entire time could be surmised in this one verse. I have to stop resisting what's going on. I remember the first time that I experienced this, it was with anger. It was January. I always file extensions and do my taxes end of the year in August. And I was thinking about how my accountant, is a really good accountant, but I have to fight him over his fees every year. And it's January. And I'm thinking, he is going to screw me on my tax. And I was getting mad in January thinking about, all the push with him coming in August. And I just read the Hawkins book. We actually did a book study on the book with some recovery people over the course of a year. I said, I'm angry. It's a chance I can use the letting go pathway to surrender things I learned. Okay. I am angry at Luke. He is going to screw me on my taxes. I let myself be angry instead of resisting it. I shouldn't feel that way, buddy. This is ridiculous. All the resistance and the fight in the head, right? And all of a sudden it started going away, like quickly. And I would be ill all afternoon about it normally. That's how I used to be, was ill all the time. And I was like, wow, this really works. And by the way, meditation's been a big help with all of this too. That really, I started meditating at 8 years, and meditation has been huge. Actually, I don't pray. I pray now, but it's listening, not asking. I spend a lot of time listening.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing this. Buddy, before we close out, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Just get in the middle of the herd, whatever your herd is. You don't have to do this alone. I would open myself up and say, I'm available. I am willing. What do I need to do? There's a Tao quote to go with that too. It says, the man of Tao stands on what is already moving. So you don't have to make something happen. You just become aware. Oh, this is where, okay. And you just go where you're being pushed. Go where you're being pushed. But thank you so much for letting me share today, Justin. And anyone that wants a free copy now, just email me from the website and I'd be happy to send one to you, or you can order it at Amazon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy. That was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting. If we didn't get to your questions, or if you have any other questions, please consider joining our WhatsApp community by sending an email to rico12pod@gmail.com and join in our community and ask those questions, answer other questions that may come up. If you're inspired and want to share something of your insights in a 12-step type share, please go to the RICO 12 Shares SpeakPipe link that is in the chat here or in the show notes, and record your 2 to 4 minute share there. It'll go up on the RICO 12 Shares meeting there. If you have not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to help us get this word out to more addicts suffering and work our 12th step. I invite the audience to come back next week when we will be hearing from another RICO 12 first-timer. His name is Leo, and he's from Russia. His topic will be the different aspects of surrender, and I think it's going to be a good follow-up to this one. I met Leo about 3 years ago in a two-way prayer group, and I'm inspired by his honesty and the way he lives his recovery. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with the love version of the Serenity Prayer that Buddy will say for us.
Hold on. God, grant me the love to accept the things I cannot change, the love to change the things I can, and the love to know the difference.
Amen. Thank you all. There's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and bind it with the seal.